So we have a bit of an interesting topic today, and that is we're going to be looking at the animation of the Battle of Gods arc, and I'm joined by the wonderful AnimeAjay.
Hello.
So, the interesting thing about the Battle of Gods arc is that there was some semblance of pre-production going into it, and the first couple episodes came out like, oh, this is fine, but then it all started falling apart. But we're just going to look at this episode by episode almost.
Yeah, just a nice overview of sort of who did what, how it looked, and I guess sort of where things started to fall apart and why, and how things sort of got put back together, I guess is the aim.
Yeah. And so we have to start at the beginning with episode 1.
We do.
And that was supervised by Yukihiro Kitano.
The one and only.
The one and only.
Okay, so tell me how you feel about Kitano first, because I don't want to come in here and just start talking about, what I think. I'm kind of interested to hear from you, first of all, I suppose.
Well, I think Kitano's interesting because you watch the first episode and it looks pretty decent. I noticed that he doesn't really use highlights very much, and so I think his models don't really have that little shine to him. But although he definitely does that more than like Tate does, but he definitely has potential. An interesting thing that I looked up and saw about him is that he was actually a character designer for a show called Chikoto Sisters.
Right.
I've never watched it.
No, neither. I don't even know what it is, so
I don't really know either, but I saw that and I was like, huh, I never would have guessed. Because episode 7 was okay, but everything after that has been mediocre, to say the least.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, like, the weird thing for me with episode 1 is that, like, even though he's the supervisor, you don't really see his touch throughout most of the episode, which I guess makes sense because he's not credited for key animation on that episode at all. And like looking through the list of people who are on there, it's a lot of people who have like a really good history with the franchise, and so I guess they didn't need much guidance. They sort of instinctively have the idea of sort of how to draw a Dragon Ball in their heads. So they just put pencil to paper and bam, they pull out something that looks good. I mean, most of the animators on there worked on Resurrection F. And obviously you had like the legend that Katsuru was on there, who for anyone who doesn't know was the character designer for GT. Did a lot of stuff for the movies. Was pretty much like the animator Toriyama to a lot of people. And so he only did a little bit. He did the scene with Kame Sennin and Chi-Chi towards the end, which looked really good. But yeah, Kitano's presence really isn't seen there. I think the only thing you kind of do see, which you just mentioned, is that the large majority of the episode does not have any highlights in it. Yamamuro's model sheets, they are covered in his highlights. The thing that everyone likes to complain about, the old they say people look oiled up.
Yeah.
They're on the sheets, but if a supervisor or an animator wants to ignore that, then they can and will, and that seems like the direction that Kitano wanted to go in for episode 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, definitely agree. It was this bizarre sort of it raised our expectations for this animator. And we'll definitely talk about episode 7 when we get to it, because I think that's definitely interesting in terms of him. But yeah.
And yeah, Nakatsuru hasn't done anything for a while either. He hasn't.
Yeah, it's weird, very weird. I don't really know what's going on with him. I mean, I looked up his credits earlier, and he did like a cut for some opening on a show called Twin Star Exorcists, but. Yeah, I have no idea. Like, I think he worked on One Punch Man episode 1 after doing Super, and that was basically it. I think
that was his last work on an anime series. I don't know what he's been up to, but
it's strange.
It is really weird.
Yeah, like I look at his credits, and it doesn't seem like he does all that much anymore. So I don't know whether I don't know whether like he's not that old. I think he's only like mid-50s. So I don't know whether he just does stuff every now and then, or whether he made a good chunk of money with all of his senior roles on like the Dragon Ball series and various stuff over the past couple of years. One Piece and whatever. That he's kind of just winding down a bit now. Maybe doesn't have to do as much. I don't know. It's definitely weird. I would have really liked to have seen him pop up on Super before again. Yeah, because
Oh,
I mean,
for sure.
I liked his work in Resurrection F. For anyone who doesn't know, he did the rotating Kamehameha towards the end with like the cool shot of Frieza and Vegeta sort of standing by the shore. It's like this very dynamic shot. He's really cool. I do miss him.
And before we move on to episode 2, episode 1's also the first time we get Jin and Abba in Super.
Yes, definitely. You know more about Jin and Abba than I do. All I know is that he was I guess he's the Higashide of like the earlier episodes.
Yeah, he did a lot.
Yeah, Higashide for people who don't know is like the guy who popped up sort of. I think he popped up like mid-40s or like maybe late 30s and kind of blew people away.
I think I know he did 36 with Shimanuki. He might have done an episode or two before that, but I don't want to say which one because I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, neither can I. But yeah, he's just like Higashide is the on-model guy, does lots of cool rotatey, spinny kicks. We talk about him quite a lot on the Kanzenshuu forums. And then Jin and Abba was a guy that we spoke about a lot, who basically did the same thing. He was just one of those like very, very on-model animators who never really did much flashy animation, but it was always polished, I guess is the best way of putting it.
It was a step above what you'd usually get. And they did a lot of work too, so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, we definitely need more animators like that, I think.
Yeah, I hope Inaba comes back now that the Resurrection F special is done.
Yeah, I had no idea where he'd gone, so seeing him pop up on that was like, he lives.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll come back.
I have to wonder if they saw what he was doing and they're like, this guy's still got it. Let's put him on this special.
Yeah, I'll have to check out his credits and see whether he actually vanished to do another show or something. But yeah, it's good to see him doing more Dragon Ball stuff.
Definitely. So now we go on to episode 2 with Osamu Ishikawa at the helm.
Yep.
And this is probably, I don't know, this is probably the second or third most well animated episode in this arc, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I'd agree, definitely. I was just gonna say Ishikawa is like an interesting character art. I guess he tends to draw characters. They are a model. They do look a lot like Yamamura's designs, but everyone looks a lot younger. I guess it's like the defining trait of him.
And then this was also the first time we see Tate.
It is, yes, my favorite.
My favorite too. He did the part where Vegeta was standing on top of Bulma's ship in the sky.
Yeah, that was an interesting cut. It's weird that he's almost unrecognizable during this part. Tate takes a very sort of loose and more sort of Z-era approach to drawing characters, and so I think Ishikawa overdrew the character art during this scene.
Yeah.
But the actual effects, like the water and like the splashes and stuff, Tate has a very distinctive way of drawing effects. It's very inspired by a lot of the animators who worked under Hosoda on One Piece Movie 6. So it's super easy to pick out his work from that side of things, but it's very, very difficult to actually see that it's him from the character art in that scene. I think going through it frame by frame, there's like one frame that sticks out for like a split second. It's like, okay, it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like that. What did you think of it?
I liked it too. I was mostly impressed by, like you said, the liquid. The liquid looked really nice. Obviously, the rotations are really cool too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, vehicle animation is so
It's not easy.
No, not easy at all. And Super doesn't have much of it. I think there's something towards the beginning of the Resurrection F arc where you do have some vehicle stuff, and even in the current Future Trunks arc with like Mai's bike, we have some stuff like that. But nothing is really compared to the complexity of this scene, I guess. I mean, I guess it's not complex, but in terms of taking a ship like that and rotating it with very sharp angles and keeping that looking consistent. It's definitely not easy. So and on Super's schedule, of course.
And we had that was probably the best piece of vehicle animation we got since Yo Son Goku, the 2008 special.
Yep, that's true.
Who animated that rotation again?
I have no idea. Not a clue.
Yeah, so we don't know everything, obviously, but I'll put it up in the video so you guys will know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it was only short, but it was quite nice. Like I think when you rotating a vehicle by itself is not easy, but then to have characters like popping up in the window and stuff is even cooler. But
very complex.
Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about a totally different show.
Yeah.
Now. But yeah, Super Episode 2. So yeah, Tati did the vehicle rotation thing, and then he did the Beerus, I don't even know what to call it, alien monster thingy that transforms and it's red and fires flames and stuff. That was him. It doesn't really, I mean, it's not the most, how do I put this? It's animated, but it's not like super flashy. It's very sort of conservative. None of the characters are really moving, but like the flame effects and whatever, and like the smoke. I mean, it's Tate through and through, and it looks really, really cool. It's sort of like very safe, quick. Let's finish this up and move on, and let me do things on episode 5.
Oh god, that's gonna be fun when we get to that.
Yeah.
But before we do that, we have to talk about what was probably the best cut in the episode, and that was Yuki Hayashi's blue dinosaur.
Yep.
Wonderful flame effects.
Yeah, really unique looking.
And he hasn't done anything for Super since this.
Sadly. Yeah. I mean, Yuki Hayashi's he's such a wonderful animator. Anyone who doesn't know who he is specifically will probably know his work from the end of Resurrection F. He did the Vegeta beatdown with Frieza when he transforms and does the fancy punches and kicks, which is definitely one of my favorite scenes from anything, even if I don't like that film very much. So it was cool to see him pop up on Super. I have a confession. I maybe kind of undersold that cut when I first watched episode 2. I guess because we were only on the second episode of Super, and so I didn't really consider what was going to be outstanding for the show. And so I sort of looked at it and thought, you know what, that's cool. There are some interesting effects here, and the stretch on the character when he does his flip is great, and like the timing's interesting. Like it's a nice cut. But I remember specifically typing posts saying like, I mean, it's nice, but it's not mind-blowing, I guess is what I was saying. And yet, coming back to it sort of with hindsight and knowing what is a norm for Super now, it's a bit eye-opening. And I think it's surprising, too, that Hayashi was given that scene instead of Beerus fighting the creature at the end. I guess in my head, logic dictates that you want the audience to see the power of Beerus, so why would you not give your best animator on that episode, the big thing at the end, as opposed to like this weird alien cut at the start? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. It was a very weird choice. He probably could have handled those lightning effects really well when
definitely.
the alien shot lightning out of its head.
Yeah. It was nice what we got. I just kind of wish he would have been put in a nicer place.
Yeah. But episode 2, it holds up pretty well.
It does. Lots of Vegeta fun.
Yeah. Now we move on to episode 3, which doesn't have much to talk about in itself, but it's the first time we see Yoshitaka Yashima.
Yep.
And he's the saving grace of Super, even though none of us are really big fans of him, but you can't overstate how much he does for the show.
Yeah, definitely. I've described him in the past, like you say, as like a saving grace for the show. Not because he's any good in terms of sort of producing fancy, flashy animation or anything, but because he is a very fast and fairly consistent animator, I guess, is a fair way to put it, even if his consistency isn't of like a high level. He primarily solos episodes. He'll sometimes have like a second key animator tidy things up, or the chief animation supervisor will step in. But his whole purpose within the show is to allow other animators to sort of have some breathing room, really. They can move on to
Yeah.
another episode. They don't have to worry about this current one. And so episode 3 is interesting because it is a solo Yashima episode, but it's incredibly polished compared to what we see in later episodes, especially sort of episode 9, which we'll get to, and of course some of the more recent efforts from him. And I think what's interesting about episode 3 is that it's very, very clearly corrected by Takio Ide, who is the chief animation supervisor for Super next to Miyako Tsuji. And the second key animator on the show was, I don't know what I think it was Satsuki something from, they're an animator from Procure. But anyway, there are a lot of on-model shots from episode 3.
It's Aizu Satsuki.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm assuming it was him, her. I suck at names.
Yeah,
doing some of the... Sorry, yeah.
I don't want to assume on that front.
No, Tumblr will come after us.
Oh yeah, and you don't want that.
No, definitely not. But yeah, no, I think he, she, it, G was responsible for some of the more on model stuff there. Because I think as much as Yashima tries, he has a very distinctive, very ugly style.
Yeah, definitely. It's impressive though that he can even manage to solo these episodes in any sort of capacity, really, especially when you consider how he also does key animation for other episodes randomly too.
Yeah, I think as much as we talk about his style, as you said, you can't ever knock him for how much effort he puts into the show. I think he's a very essential piece of the puzzle.
It's especially impressive considering his age, because when I was researching him for one of my roundup videos a while back, he's been animating since the late 70s. So
oh god, I feel bad for him now. Poor guy.
He's in his 60s and he's still able to crank these episodes out, and it's really impressive.
I've just got this vision of this sad old man in the corner of Toei, slumped over, sweating and just scribbling out Goku, and he's looking at his coworker's phone because he doesn't do technology, and you can just see people going, "God, that Yashima guy, what is this off-model rubbish?" Yep, that's my vision of him. I'm very mature.
I would not be surprised. It's probably the same thing with Tate, but
yep,
we'll get to that.
We will.
And episode 4 is a fun one because
it's the funnest episode of Super. I don't care what anyone says. There is no episode that's more fun than 4.
It really is. It was supervised by Seizo Toma, who basically just went crazy.
Yep, he did. I've also have another confession. I'm just going to go through confessions as I talk about, because this is all of these episodes are when I was first really paying attention to Super's animation, and so. Even though I'd followed animation in the past, I wasn't I guess I wasn't totally clued up on everything, and so I called him Saizo for a long time. He was just Saizo to me.
Saizo.
Do you know what? I will be 100% honest. Until you did that video on him, I was still calling him Saizo until you suddenly said Seizo, and I went, "Oh shit! It's SEI. Yeah. I can't read."
I'm so pretty sure that's how you say it.
100%, 100%. Yeah. But for some reason, I just had an epiphany. And the same thing happened with Tate. I was calling him Tate for a while as well. I think a lot of people do that though.
Yeah, I saw a couple of videos where people called him that, and I was confused. But
yeah. How do I Japanese? I don't know.
How does one Japanese? I'm studying Japanese right now, and I'm not quite sure.
Wow, look at this weeb.
Right.
No, I considered it. I'll get to it at some point. I signed up to something, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at sticking to things.
But yeah, Toma went crazy. I mean, he just threw everything out the window and said, we're going to see these characters, we're going to put lines on them. We're going to make them thick. And
beautiful thick lines.
And we're also going to make all of the facial expressions just crazy.
Yeah, I love that episode. I think it's a shame because the style that we see in episode 4 is just not really in any of the future episodes that Toma has done.
No.
And I'm thinking that it was maybe because this was the only episode that he's done where he was the only animation supervisor. And so I feel like because it was just his episode, he can put his touch on everything. But because he's then working with other supervisors later on, maybe he's having to, rein in his style so that you don't have like half an episode with like these crazy thick brushstrokes, and then the rest of it is just regular looking. So I don't know about that. But episode 4 definitely had surprisingly one of the strongest productions. And I'm assuming that it probably came as a result of episode 3. There's no outsourcing going on in episode 4. All of the key animator, like, it's a very small key animator list as well. So I feel like they drew this episode out quickly, and Toma was able to go through and sort of apply his style to it, and it turned out really, really nicely. There are so many perfect screen grabs in this episode. It's lovely. It's like one of those episodes when I first got the Blu-ray, I was just like screenshot, and it was just like so good.
Yeah, it felt like he was having like real fun, and it doesn't.
Definitely.
I have to, like, those are my two theories about his later work. Is it's either because of the other supervisors, or maybe it's because of the schedule, or he's just not having fun anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sad. It makes me really sad. Like he's. I guess what's a shame is because he's kind of become like a, how do I put it? Like a B tier supervisor. Like he's not given any important episodes anymore. He's just he's shoved on the ones that don't really matter. He's given another supervisor who's sometimes not that great, and then the animators he gets stuck with sometimes not that great either. And so it kind of feels like a real waste of his talent. Like I genuinely would not be surprised if he left soon.
Yeah.
To go and just do something else and have fun and be able to animate as he wants, because like it must be depressing to have to sit down and know that, one, be super rushed, two, not be able to express what you want on the paper. I don't know, to me that just depresses me a bit. So
it definitely wouldn't surprise me if he left either, because him sticking around for a show this long, just based on what I've seen, on his Animator's Corner page, is pretty unusual for him. He doesn't really stick around on a single show for very long. He'll just drop in, do some key animation for an episode or two, and he'll move on to something else.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, he's done some key animation for like Fairy Tail and Naruto, so he just goes around. So it's very peculiar.
Yeah, that's strange. Oh well, I mean, I hope he sticks around. I hope he gets given like a fun episode or something.
Yeah, there's not really anything stand out about the animation itself in episode 4, but it's but I mean, Toma's work is still really nice and unique.
Yeah, it definitely gets by like just on his expressiveness. Like as you say, there's not masses of animation, but it's just like it's expressive drawing after expressive drawing, like over and over and over again. And it's kind of proof that in episodes like this, you don't have to have like flashy character acting or whatever. Like you can get by on like an interesting storyboard and interesting art. For sure.
We've been dreading this moment, but we have to talk about episode 5 now.
Get your memes ready, boys. We're going in.
Yep. Get your Beerus in-betweens.
Yep. Make sure you zoom in all the way.
Yeah. Just to hammer it in harder. But this is the big one. This is where Super's production just finally collapsed in on itself.
Yep. Doomsday.
Yeah. Tate, I assume that he was probably he came into work one day and they're just like, okay, so we need to have episode 5 done soon, so here you go. Because he did a lot for episode 2.
Yeah. So that's the weird thing. So like he did all those cuts for episode 2, and they looked really cool. And then episode 5 comes along. It's him being an animation supervisor. And historically, at least on One Piece and on his work on sort of what's it called, Discworld's Avengers, whenever he's a supervisor, he always does his own key animation.
Yeah.
And so in episode 5, he's not listed as a key animator, but he's very clearly.
Yeah, he definitely animated for it, though.
Yeah, like that entire second half is almost entirely him.
Yeah, him
and even parts of the yeah, exactly. And like even the first half has bits from Tati as well, but he's not credited. And so I guess my theory, because obviously we know something went wrong with that episode. Otsuka had a tweet that was like, oh, it looks bad because various circumstances. The typical Japanese, no specifics. Something happened. That's basically all we know. And so my theory, I guess I have two theories. I feel like one, he either came in and sort of looked at all of the cuts he had to approve and went, holy fuck, this is terrible. I'm going to redraw everything and do what I can. Yeah. And obviously put emphasis on the second half of the episode. Or maybe the animators ran out of time and he sat there like looking at the list of cuts to be completed and thinking, Jesus, like this is not gonna get done. So maybe he took it upon himself to finish what he could, which is why his animation seems to pop up sort of randomly. Like you have like this terrible cut towards the start where it's just like a long shot, and then suddenly you have like quite a cool dive, which is drawn by Tate, and then the next minute it's not him at all. So he's kind of haphazardly placed in the episode, and so I don't really know what went on there, but I appreciate the effort he went to, because as we know, I mean, Tate is a great animator. Like, I mean, I have had a whole video. It might be up by the time you see this video. Yay, copyright strikes are great.
Thank you,
but yeah, thanks, Tate. He's a good animator, but he's also a really fast one. And so like his rough work, maybe it doesn't look the best, but it moves really well. And I feel like you can actually see that in effect here, in the sense that if you look at the first half of the episode, it's really rough and it looks like shit. It's terrible. And yet the second half is also really rough, but it moves well. I feel like that's the difference between like a rough, talented animator and someone who's just not very good. So yeah, I don't really know what to say, because this episode is just it makes me sad. It's like I don't think Super is ever gonna live it down, because of one, I think a lot of people dropped the series at episode 5 and never saw how it improved. I guess it's also a good thing, because then people didn't see episode 24, which think would have just crushed everyone's
24 hopes. Is much worse than episode 5, and I always wonder why people still bring up episode 5.
Yeah, I think it is literally because people drop the show. Like I feel like if more people stuck around and more people saw 24, or maybe because by 24 people were like used to episodes looking like shit sometimes. But yeah, episode 24 is absolutely the worst by a mile.
I mean, the second half of episode 5 was decent. I mean, Otsuka Ken didn't really do much actual animation. It was mostly just repeat frames, but it still looked pretty nice. And then, Tate, when Beerus catches Goku's hand and, flings him down to the ground, that looked really cool. And then the Kamehameha looked decent, too. The one at the end.
Second half is really nice, like especially in Blu-ray, where they tidy things up in that second half a lot. Like I have pretty much zero issues with the second half of that episode. I think criticisms towards episode 5 anyway were just overblown because of the sort of the first half of the fight. I think a lot of people remember that more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so I'm not massively worried about people seeing episode 5, like when the dub comes out. Maybe they've never seen it before. I feel like at that point they'll sort of think, okay, the first half was iffy, but the second half was fine. Like I'm hoping that's what's going to happen.
This I mean, it's definitely not a great episode. We're not trying to lie about that, but it's been blown way out of proportion.
Again, I struggle to say more on episode 5, because at this point it's just so
we've had this conversation so many times. It feels like there's just not much more to say about it. It wasn't Tate's fault. This was a sign that the production was just going out the window. There's not really anyone to blame, really.
Yeah, like you can't blame Tate. You can't really blame any of the animators on the episode, because, well, for the most part, none of them are bad. Like if you look at what they've done in the past, they're all mostly fine. But yeah, I think it's just absolutely a one-off episode that was an anomaly, really. Yeah. Like even like I 100% admit that Super doesn't have the best animation ever, totally. and the production is all over the place. But you cannot judge the series on one episode alone. And even though we've called episode 24 the worst episode in the series, episode 24 is the worst episode in the series by design, almost. And I say that because the Resurrection F arc is deliberately outsourced. Like every single episode is outsourced to like 1,000 studios, and they're all in like China and South Korea, and it's like it's very deliberately rushing through episodes to get them done. Whereas episode 5 is just shit went wrong, and
it went kind really wrong.
Yeah. So just leave episode 5 alone. Just put it to bed and just move on.
Yeah, just let it go. The Blu-ray looks fine. It's dead and gone.
Yep.
Okay, so episode 6 now. We see Shuichiro Manabe and Tetsuya Oka show up for the first time.
Yep.
And they're interesting because they've been a little duo since Disc Wars. And
yep. Nice little pair. They're kind of like they're like the main pair for finales in Super.
They show up for episode 14, and then they showed up later on for 27.
Yep, and I think they were also a part of episode 39 as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so they're kind of like the people that Toei pull in for big episodes, and I'm not really sure why, but
I don't know either. It's really
I don't
bizarre.
Know. It is.
It seems like Manabe has been getting a little bit more attention on his own since he's actually been left to kind of work with other people and kind of supervise. His style is probably the more recognizable between the two.
Definitely. I have absolutely no idea what Oka's style looks like.
No,
and episode 6 is so bizarre to me because like we were talking about outsourced things in the Resurrection F arc, this entire episode is it's mostly outsourced, and so you don't really get a sense of Supervisor's touches coming into this episode, really. There's no way that you can really tell that it's Manabe, especially if you compare it to the episodes that we were just talking about. Like Manabe is known for these really sort of ridiculously angular designs, and yet everything in this is either on model or it's been corrected by Tsuji. So I don't know. I'm assuming that maybe like the outsource work came in and they just went, you can draw on model, you go fix this, and I'll fix some of this, and then Tsuji, you go do this. And so I don't really know what to say about this episode. Like
there's not much of a talking point. I mean, maybe we could talk about how awesome Hitano Morio is, but he's not an animator. But
the storyboard in this episode is amazing, but
fantastic.
there's nothing to talk about
animation wise other than this is the first time these guys show up.
Yeah, it was kind of like an okay sort of safe-ish episode that I think Super kind of needed after episode 5. I think a lot of people watched 6 and went, okay, we're okay, everyone calm down.
Okay, the ship has kind of been righted.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, not much to go on there. And now we're on to episode 7, which is Kitano again.
It is.
And it's still okay for the Kitano episode. Still looks pretty similar to how episode 1 looked for the most part. Not a whole lot to talk about with this one either.
It's a strange one. So I guess this is the first episode that I consider Kitano actually coming through, which I guess makes sense because he actually animated on this.
Wasn't he the lead animator too? He animated.
I think he was definitely top credited, and so it definitely looks very him. But it's way more polished, which is nice. I think unpolished Kitano is not great, which is it's not the best, and we are sadly only really showing unpolished Kitano these days, so it's kind of nice to go back. But so the episode isn't really all that animated. I guess the most interesting part is the ending where Vegeta's freaking out and you have this very sort of dynamic pose with Super Saiyan Vegeta with this giant eye and massive teeth, just snarling. That's a really cool shot. And then so here's the thing. There's a bit where Vegeta freaks out because, Beerus has just smacked Bulma back, and he's like freaking out, and
Yeah.
and it's animated. I'm pretty sure it's animated by Kitano himself, but
Yeah.
it's over animated.
Yeah, it's
Like the expression is too much, and it repeats over and over again, and so it kind of forced Horikawa to overact as well. And so watching
oh
it back,
yeah.
it's almost comedy because he's like ah, and then it cuts away, and then he's like ah, and it just gets like bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just oh god,
that entire
it's so funny.
That entire scene is just so it's funny. It's so unintentionally funny. Like basically from the point where Beerus slaps Bulma onward is just
Yeah. It's like
unintentional hilarity.
Absolutely. Like I always talk about how I love over the top and expressive drawings. I love that. But I feel like this is the perfect example where you have to look at the storyboard and judge whether an expressive drawing is really appropriate for what the scene is. So I feel like the way you would fix this, and I probably shouldn't have an ego to be like, yeah, this is how you would fix this. But I think what would have been like way more effective is rather than from the first frame of the freak out to have this gaping mouth and wide eyes, would be to slowly build it up.
Yeah.
Like begin by like building, I don't know, like the
Yeah.
eyes and then the mouth, and then just keep building it until you reach like the climax where he transforms and whatever. You kind of just go from 0 to like 20.
Yeah, I was gonna say he just went all out right from the beginning.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that is the fault of the storyboarder. Maybe the storyboards, from the get go showed a gaping mouth, and the animator just went, yeah, okay, I'll do this. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was a serious misstep there, and I kind of feel bad for Horikawa because there's not much he can do there. Like it's not like he can just dial it back towards the start because there's no you have to match what the animation does. And so yeah, there were no options for him. This is totally nothing to do with animation and voice acting, but yeah.
Well, actually, it's interesting you bring up the storyboard because it was actually a Ishida storyboard.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
Which is interesting because his storyboards are really good, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'm just gonna assume it was the animator's fault.
Okay, yeah, I can sleep well thinking that.
Yeah, I don't want to knock Shida.
Yeah,
I'm totally biased.
Totally, 100%. And now, episode 8, which is another not very noteworthy, other than Shimanuki showing up.
Yeah, do you know what is horrendous about this episode, and I'll never ever forget it, and it's because it is the introduction of that terrible Sumitomo theme when Goku shows up, and it's so bad. Oh my god, it's the worst. Oh please. So, yeah, that's like the one thing I remember from episode 8, because I think episode 8 like even though it was a Shimanuki episode, I don't think he was a key animator on it, was he? I think he was just a supervisor, and so you barely see him throughout the episode.
He's not credited as a key animator now.
Yeah, I think what I do remember from episode 8 though, I think that's the episode that opens with Vegeta fighting Beerus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say that I'm pretty sure that's animated by someone called Takashi Nashizawa.
Yeah.
Who I think he worked on Battle of Gods, and he also worked on episode 11 as well, from what I remember.
Yeah.
He is a pretty good animator, honestly. He draws very close to the model sheets. Nothing spectacular, but yeah, he's pretty cool. And I think Jin and Abba is also on episode 8. So you sort of have those pair, just sort of. You don't really see Shimanuki, basically. You kind of are just getting sort of Yamamuro-esque designs aside from a couple of things here and there. But I think the thing to note is that when you do see Shimanuki's art, it's not great. It's very, very one-piecey.
You can definitely tell that it's his first episode back in a long time.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the roughest he's probably been.
Yeah.
Except maybe
Kinda
in
sucks.
episode 12, but that's
Oh,
a little
God.
later. Oh, and
Yeah.
also, before we move on, Akira Akano was also this animation supervisor, but...
Not really? I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't really tell you their style very well.
No. Oh, well.
Okay.
Yeah. That's episode 8, guys.
That's episode
Enjoy.
8. There really isn't much. There was a spinny part where Vegeta was just a still frame.
Oh no! Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yep. He like dashes forward, doesn't he? And like it's not animated. They just sort of take the frame and enlarge it.
Yeah, they enlarge it. There's that, and then there's when he gets punched by Beerus and he starts spinning around, and that's just a still frame that's literally rotated around.
Just becomes a pinwheel for
like
5 seconds.
And
that's fun.
Yeah, I mean the stuff around that was kind of okay, but
yeah, like it's not a bad episode.
No.
Yeah, it's just like I say this a lot. There's no animation.
Not really, no. Yeah. And now we're on to episode 9, which is a little bit more of a controversial Yashima episode.
Yeah, this is like Yashima going, "Hey guys, hi. This is what I do. Here's the art style. This is what you're gonna get for the rest of the series. Enjoy."
This is actually me.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a fun one. I was sorry. I was just gonna say like this. It's not very nice looking until the end, and the end isn't him. That's the chief animation supervisor Takeo Ide coming in again to just make stuff look pretty.
Yashima got a lot of heat for that. The actual ritual.
Yeah.
And it didn't look good. It really didn't. And I'm really surprised that they didn't correct that episode at all for the Blu-rays.
Yeah, that was kind of mind blowing because it was because it's an episode that is mostly comprised of stills. I was really, really surprised that they didn't find the time to just get someone who can draw well to sit down and just, essentially play second KA to that episode. I don't think it would have. I think it probably would have taken someone maybe like 2 days to just go through and tackle some of the worst shots from that thing.
Yeah, nothing in that ritual moves. There's just
Yeah, it's just like a still and camera shake, and then they get like that weird filter. There's like chromatic abrasion going on. Yeah, it's just
Super Saiyan Videl.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, before we move on to episode 10, I guess I do want to just talk about that ending. Because I think that the key thing that we've been mentioning every time we bring up Yashima is about the chief animation supervisor stepping in to correct things and essentially sort of play supervisor to the supervisor. And this is kind of, I guess it's worth talking about because this is kind of like a theme throughout Super, even though the animation supervisor is really the person who should be correcting other animators and ensuring sort of consistency within an episode. I think because of the schedule, the chief animation supervisor steps in and plays that role far more than the supervisor themselves. So you'll see people like Takeo Ide and especially Miyako Tsuji everywhere in Super, everywhere. You'd be so hard pressed to find an episode that doesn't have Tsuji in it. Like he really is just all over the place, and they're kind of, I guess they're underappreciated. Not intentionally, but mostly because I didn't notice until recently. I didn't really pick out Tsuji's style until I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago or something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. And Tsuji's an interesting one because his style looks. It's like a weird cross between Tate and Yashima.
Yeah, it is really strange. Sometimes he just looks like because like Yashima's very angular. He likes angles and pointy noses and stuff, and so Tsuji kind of looks like a more rounded Yashima. And so for a long time, everyone kind of assumed that what was actually Tsuji was just Yashima polishing his work, which wasn't the case. And then Tsuji also has his polished style, which looks a lot like how Tate used to draw in Dragon Ball Z. And so we then assumed that when Tate wasn't animating, he was really polishing up his art as well. So like Tsuji's this weird chameleon that no one noticed until very recently.
Yeah, you went pretty crazy there for a while trying to figure out.
I did. Oh my god.
Right, trying to figure out his style.
Most people don't see this. We have like a little chat room where we talk about these things, and I think I popped up one day and was like,
that was the
hey
first
guys.
thing you sent us.
Yeah, I was like, hey guys, is this Tsuji?
Yeah.
Sorry, no, I said, is this Tate? I'm pretty sure this is Tate. This was during it was Shimanuki's episode. What was it, episode 50 something? 50 where are we at? 52?
I think
53?
I think it was 52 or 53, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was one of them. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I'll put pictures. I know what episode you're talking about.
Yeah, and so there were all of these shots that looked so much like Tate. Like there was a shot of Trunks with like the sword in front of his face that, to my eyes at the time, was like 1-to-1 with what Tate had done in 57. I was so convinced it was him, and then suddenly I was looking, and because I just assumed, oh, maybe it's just Tate doing some uncredited animation just to get the episode done. And then I looked back through some other episodes because I was like, I kind of recognize this style. And then suddenly I was seeing this style everywhere. And I was like, no, there's no way that Tate does this much uncredited animation. Like that's not possible. And I'm going on a massive tangent here. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And then I was like, oh, but there's this Korean animator who's on all of these episodes as well. So maybe it's him. But then I suddenly found like a million more episodes that didn't have this Korean animator on it, and they didn't have they had this style as well. So it couldn't have been him. And then suddenly I was like, oh shit, the one constant thing between all of these episodes that has the style in it is Suji. And it makes so much sense that, of course, the chief animation supervisor is going to be on all of these episodes. Like it seems so obvious then, which I guess is like that's to me that's like the fun of working out styles. Like you drive yourself crazy for a while, and then as soon as you crack it, you're like, yes, I now know you.
It's an extremely satisfying feeling.
Yep.
I kind of went through the same thing with Inaba for a while, where
yeah. I couldn't pick him out at all.
I think with him, the thing that I always look for, I guess, are the eyes and the ears, because his eyes are usually he's more rounded than a lot of people, and his ears are really smooth most of the time.
Okay, you'll have to teach me. You'll have to show me examples, because so for example, when I first looked at Higashide, I was like, there's no way. How am I going to pick this guy out? Because he just draws so unmodeled that there's nothing coming through. And then suddenly, like, something clicks with you. And you start to, like, notice, like, tiny little details in the art that makes it obvious. Yeah. So I guess, you'll have to show me what those details are with Inaba once we wrap this up.
Yeah, I might have to. Although I could be totally off base, too. I don't know. It's tough because the character designs, but that's a tangent.
It is.
So on to episode 10.
Yep.
And it's another Ishikawa episode.
It is.
And it's pretty solid overall.
It is. I was going to say, I was about to say, it's a funny coincidence because episode 10 is like a big episode for Jin and Abba. Yeah. He does a lot. And we also just spoke about Suji, who also does a lot on this episode.
Yeah.
And I think the main reason for this is because this episode is also really heavily outsourced. Basically everything from this point on is like heavily outsourced until we sort of get to sort of the end of Universe 6. Like this is the point where Toei's like, oh shit, production's fucked. Let's studios come help. And so everything's outsourced and supervisors and talented animators are kind of just doing what they can to fix up stuff that comes in and ensure episodes are looking decent. And so it's okay. It's not. It looks nice. There's no bad frames in it where you're gonna go, oh my god, what is this? Everything it looks fine. It's the kind of episode I just call safe and inoffensive. It does what it does.
And not a whole lot to talk about, but it's safe. It's solid. Nothing wrong with it.
Nope, no complaints.
And then this is episode 11 is probably the first really fun episode that we get to talk about, even though it's not. It doesn't have anything extremely noteworthy in it, but it's just it's so satisfying. Yeah,
I love episode 11. I think it's 100% my favorite episode of this arc.
By far.
Yeah, so this is supervised by Naoki Tate. This is his first episode since episode 5, and I call this the fuck you episode.
It really is.
Yeah, because it's so polished.
Yeah.
There's maybe like two iffy looking scenes in this episode. Everything else is pretty much perfect. In terms of animators, you have Nashizawa, who we were talking about earlier from episode 7 or 8.
He pops up in a lot of them.
Yeah, so he's in episode 11. He provides most of the very on model stuff. Tate comes in, and his style, he handles most of the action in this. The sort of opening half is, I guess it's not the most animated thing in the world. Like there's some cool stuff like Beerus being kicked through clouds and,
and
sort of
the flurries, they look pretty.
and there's like some fun faces as well thrown in there. It's
Tate's facial expressions are
they
pretty
are the
pretty
best.
wonderful.
So good. And so like the first episode is really, really nice, and then Tate comes in full force from the second half where things sort of really start to kick up. He does like Beerus like throwing Goku into the ground, like pummeling him, and there's like flips and cool smoke, and then suddenly they're in space, and like Beerus is doing like a fancy like overhead kick, and then Goku brings out the Kamehameha, and like this is all Tate, and it's so polished. Like it looks fantastic. It was like even though the episode wasn't very animated, like there wasn't loads of fancy stuff like you see in Tate's episodes now, it was basically his proving episode where he was like, okay, episode 5 looked bad, whatever, like I can draw, look, I can do this, but see what the cost is in terms of how things move, because things don't really move in a series with super schedule. To have really fancy animation, you kind of have to sacrifice things in certain areas, unless you're someone who is coming in out of the blue, who has never worked on the series before. Someone like Shida, for example, in 57, he's not tied up with things. He can just do his cut in his own time and hand it in. Whereas, when you're a regular animator on the show, you have to, work out where you want to take your cuts.
Yeah, and that another thing about Tate animating so much of the action in this episode is that the staff list is pretty normal for this one, actually. And really, most of the outsourcing is just in the second key animation, but
I was really happy with episode 11. And like, even here's the thing, like even though it's not the most it's well animated, it doesn't have lots of motion, I guess is what I want to say. It's still one of the best episodes because of how well written and directed it is. You have like King Ryu's writing, which is always great, and I forget the name of the director, but he did a really good job of sort of taking the episode through like a natural arc. Like you had this nice build up, you had like the turning point where Goku gets stabbed, which is beautifully animated, and then you have like the cool cliffhanger ending. Like it's really, really well done, and so it's like the icing on the cake that the animation is also good enough to match what the episode was going for. So it's definitely a contrast.
A complete package.
Yeah, it is, and it's a stark contrast to the next episode we're talking about,
which is episode 12, which derailed whatever momentum episode 11 had going for it.
I don't know why episode 12 exists. It might as well not be an episode. There's no animation. It's pointless. There's no story. It does nothing. Like it looks awful and nothing happens.
It's a fight that's literally filler. Like
there's barely even a fight. It's like Beerus and Goku stood there going for like the entire episode. It's like someone went
comedic.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, and like the dragons come out of them. Like it was so bad, and to me it was verging on parody. It was like someone sort of went on like a Reddit thread that was like, sum up Dragon Ball Z, and someone just went screaming for 500 minutes, and they went, okay, we'll do that, and let's put in some dragons for good measure.
Yeah, and then that was also this is nothing to do about animation at this point, but I think that was also the episode where the whole they're gonna destroy the universe thing started.
Yeah,
and they also somehow completed that conflict in the same episode, so it was like it didn't even need to happen.
It was a waste of time, and it was a Shimanuki episode. And it looked terrible because Shimanuki didn't remember how to draw Dragon Ball for a long time. I don't think he remembered how to draw Dragon Ball until like episode 25, or like up to the sort of in the middle of the Universe 6 arc. So it didn't look very good. You had sort of Tate, and I think Ishikawa was also like an assistant supervisor. They kind of did a couple of things here and there to sort of try and save the episode, but it was a waste of time. It didn't need to exist. It was almost like they just wanted to pad it out to keep things rolling.
But there's not really much else to talk about, so we get to move on to episode 13, which
is... time to ruffle some feathers.
A lot of people aren't going to be happy about our opinion on episode 13. We like episode 13. It's all right.
We do.
It has...
To me... Go on.
It has a really good cut from Yuya Takahashi, who is an incredibly talented animator who did work for Resurrection F, and the Resurrection F special, actually. He also did Battle of Gods. I forgot about that. But he did the part where Goku and Beerus are flying at each other. There's a flurry of punches and kicks, and it's kind of like Sheeta's part in Battle of Gods. Not really.
Yeah, it's like the TV version of it, like a scaled down Sheeta cut.
Is basically, and that's what Takahashi basically is. He's mini Sheeta.
He is. So this episode was supervised by Yukihiro Kitano, who we've spoken about, and I mean, you don't really feel his presence on this episode, so there's not really any point in addressing him. This was also the first episode that Tadayoshi Yamamuro was the supervisor for, and if you don't know, he is the character designer for the show. He has been the animation director for pretty much everything Dragon Ball for like the past decade or so. Yeah, like Battle of Gods, Yosan Goku, and Resurrection F, but basically everything. Like if it's Dragon Ball, it was probably supervised by him. And so this episode is really polished. I mean, it's impossible not to be. When everyone is trying to draw like you don't have to try very hard to fix anything that's off. So this episode looks very on model. It looks like the designs that you see in the films, which leads a lot of people to go, yeah, this is movie quality, which I don't think is very fair.
Not.
No, I think what people mean by that is that it's consistent. There's basically no variance in style coming through at all. It's just on model throughout, which is fine. If that's your thing, that's absolutely fine. But in terms of the animation, aside from the Takahashi cut that you were talking about at the end, which is, it's pretty cool. I like it. It's, it's not blowing anyone's minds, but it was really, really cool for Super at the time. The actual animation itself isn't all that great.
It's not great.
No. So this episode was storyboarded by Yamamuro. And so here's the thing. Like, Yamamuro, he has a great knowledge of martial arts, and I will never, ever knock him for that. And I think he used to be able to translate that to paper when animating, really well. But unfortunately, I don't think he does that very well anymore. And so what you end up with are these static frames where there's just stuff kind of going on very sort of stiffly, inside of it. And it doesn't feel very dynamic. And in this case, even more so because the action doesn't feel in between. And I'm pretty sure it's not in between because, it's like even though the choreography is cool, the camera isn't moving and everything is kind of snapping between each pose because there's just no in between it going on. And so, a lot of people were yearning for a good fight from Super at this point. And so they see, interesting choreography. And I think they kind of have blinders on about how well it's executed.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. But here's the thing. Like, I don't want to be too negative because I understand 100% why people like this episode. And I like it too. But I feel like its quality is overstated because of sort of the expectations at the time and because of the character art. People aren't paying attention to the animation. They're paying attention to
how pretty it looks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now we're on to the last one and probably the biggest one, which is episode 14. And you would agree that this is probably the best animated episode of this arc, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, like in terms of sort of action animation, yeah.
Basically, most of the first half is fighting, and there's a little bit of stuff going on in the second half. You hadn't really gotten anything quite like that in Super yet. And then right off the bat in episode 14, we see Ryo Onishi just pop up and deliver what is still the longest piece of Dragon Ball Super Sakuga in the series yet.
Yeah, it's mad.
It is.
I barely even acknowledged how good that cut was when the episode first came out. Like it didn't even occur to me just how good that really was. I guess I just didn't pay attention to one, how good the movement was, how much the camera was moving, and how long it was, and it was crazy. What blows my mind is that we've just sort of praised episode 57 this week, or last week or whatever, for being able to do so much action for so long. But this was like
This is the first time.
The big episode, even though it
Yeah.
doesn't have the level of sort of character art polish that we've sort of been praising 57 for, this was, animation, and it's moving, and the fighting is good, and it's going, and it's going, and it's not stopping. This is great.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on in Onishi's cut. Very forceful hits. Then there was when they went to the water, the liquid looked similar to what he did for Battle of Gods. When they first tried to do the ritual and they were powering up,
Yeah.
and, the water in the pool was moving around, and I even got kind of excited the way the fish moved at the end, and I was like, I think there's something wrong with me, because I was just like, that fish was really well animated.
You sound like the Call of Duty devs. Advanced fish AI.
Oh God, that's another.
That's an old meme.
It is a very old meme. It's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. There is a lot going on. I think my favorite part of the cut is, well, I guess I have two favorites. I think my favorite is the beginning bit where the camera comes up, like Beerus jumps off camera, and then the camera follows him slightly afterwards, and so there's just like this really cool disconnect going on between the camera and the character, and it just looks fantastic because then the beams come in and they look cool as well.
Yeah.
But my favorite bit, second favorite bit, is when they come down through the clouds, and they come through with such force that the clouds like split open.
Yeah.
And it's so well animated, and it's such a dynamic fight, and it's the kind of thing that people were really craving for in this arc. Like since Super started, everyone was like, "Man, these fights are so slow," and this kind of like it blew everyone away. And I will 100% hold my hands up and admit that the character art in this is not good,
no, it's not.
It's not like Tate where it's deliberately loose and going for a certain style. It's kind of like we're just rushing this. Yeah.
Because there were so many key animators on this, and a lot of them were outsourced. Like they just have a lot of studios listed for the key animation.
Yeah, so much outsourcing.
Yeah, it was definitely great, but you can tell it took so much just to get it done. But that Onishi cut is definitely the best piece of animation in this arc. And
definitely. I think it was probably the best piece we had up until sort of episode 26.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Definitely in that Tate cut in episode 26, which is, I guess, this is probably my second favorite now. But
yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I guess it was kind of a shame that the action didn't extend as long as it did. Like I almost feel like you could have kept that fight going for the whole thing and then rounded it up in like episode 15. But I feel like I only feel that way because episode 12 just feels like a pointless episode. So it's like almost like because it's meant to go like episode 11 the fight ramps up, and then it's meant to be episode 12 and 13 the fight ramps up, and then 14 is where it finishes. What it feels like is fight ramps up just towards the end of episode 11, then the main bulk in episode 13, and then 14 is like, let's quickly end it, and then end the arc. It doesn't flow properly for me because that one episode just isn't really doing anything.
Yeah, episode 14 really did feel pretty abrupt because the fight ended not too long after the eye catch. So
it was over with pretty quickly.
That beam struggle was kind of cool. The one that happened after the eye catch.
I can barely even remember it. Were they like on top of the water at that point?
No, they were back in space.
Oh, were they? Okay. I can't really remember. Actually, I think I do. Was there like a big explosion afterwards?
Yeah. It came so close to being really good because when Goku's Kamehameha and then Beerus's like ball thing initially collided, like the effects, like they started. Like
I remember it now. Yeah.
Oh, this is the start of something else that's really cool. But then just the explosion happened, and
then that's it. Like that's the episode.
Yeah.
So, what did you? Okay, I guess to try and wrap things up nicely, give me your top 3 moments from the arc and tell me what how you would rate the sort of animation on the whole from the Battle of Gods arc.
So I think we're talking about animated moments, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. My third favorite would probably be Hayashi's Blue Dinosaur cut. Like I said, love the fire, the debris, and even the way, the alien's body contorts when he hits the dinosaur over the head. It's really wonderful. Second favorite, probably Takahashi's cut in 13. It came really close to being almost Sheeta tier, but it was still really nice. And then Onishi obviously being the first.
You stole my list.
I'm sorry.
No, I 100% agree. I guess it was a silly question because there's not really much to draw from.
I think those are the only three really good moments, aren't they?
Yeah, I can't think of anything that would top that. I mean, maybe some of the I feel like if I was gonna maybe throw in a controversial choice instead of the dinosaur cut, I would pick the Tate's Kamehameha from 5, where the eye pop and the hands go back, and then you get the cool effects as he smashes through the earth. I feel like that would be my number 3.
Yeah, that explosion from the Kamehameha looked really nice with the smoke.
Yeah, I think in terms of what I would rate the arc out of 10 overall, I suppose probably a 6.
Yeah, that's about right. It was okay in terms of the animation. And it started it off pretty decent. If the entire show had been able to maintain the quality of the first couple of episodes, which it easily could have, but
yeah,
I don't think many of us would have a huge problem with how Super is animated most of the time. But
I agree. It's without the 3 moments that we just mentioned, then I feel like that arc would probably be a 5, like a 4.5, just sort of very sort of middle of the road. Maybe you lose that half a point to 4.5 because of some of the production issues. But then I feel because you do have some nice storyboarding and those cool cuts in there, I feel like that can definitely push it up to a 6 or a 5.5 if you really want to be a little harsh.
Yeah. But overall, the arc was pretty solid. I don't have a huge problem with it in terms of the animation. I don't love it. Don't get me wrong. And it's a shame because we knew going in that was there really enough pre-production for this show. It was just okay, we see the first couple of episodes, they look all right. Okay, maybe they did good, but then it just fell apart.
It did. It's a shame. I guess what I would call my final thoughts on this arc is that when we were watching it week to week, I feel like it felt worse than what it was because you had episode 5 looming over everything, and so any part of an episode that looked even a little bit wrong, which is absolutely normal for a weekly production, like Super, it was being scrutinized to the highest degree. And so coming back and sort of rewatching this arc with a totally level head and sort of having none of the episode 5 drama sort of clouding anyone's opinions, it's fine. It's okay. It's obviously nothing compared to the standards that we're at now, but it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah. It's definitely much better than the arc that followed it.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, if we get around to talking about that one, it'll
be 2 hours of
us
for fuck's sake, Toei, why would you stop, please? Oh. I'll just cry into the microphone for an hour.
For about an hour, yeah.
Yep. All right.
I think that about does it. Thanks for coming on, AJ.
No worries.
Might have to do this again for the other arcs.
Yep. Universe 6 is the one I really want to talk about. Just
that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think I'll upset people with that one because people like that one a lot, and I'm kind of iffy on it.
Episode 39, we're looking at you.
Yeah. Oh god, that's gonna be episode 13 chatter again.
Yeah, we'll get to that. All right. See ya, everybody.
Bye.